Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on paratransit electrification, and thank you very much for joining us today. This is the first session of a series of three webinars that will explore how cities in Africa can turn one of their most widely used transport mode, paratransit, into a cleaner, safer, and more sustainable system. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Joanne Collet, Sustainable Mobility Expert at Mobilize Your City Partnership Global Secretariat in Brussels. I will be hosting the session today. Next slide, please. Before we start our session, just a few simple reminders. Please make sure that your microphones and cameras are turned off. We would like to remind you that to inform you that this webinar is being recorded. If you keep your camera off, you will not appear in the recording. Your questions are obviously welcome. You can write them in the chat and there will be time to address them at the end of the session. And finally, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete our feedback questionnaire at the end of the session. Thank you very much. And next slide, please. So this webinar series is the result of a collaboration between partners who are all working on paratransit and decarbonisation, including TUMI, Changing Transport, C40 Cities, GIZ, and Mobilize Your City. Each of these organizations work on this topic from different angles and felt it would be highly valuable and interesting to come together to share knowledge and experiences. A bit of context before we dive deeper. So paratransit is one of the most widely used forms of public transport across African cities, but it also contributes significantly to air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. This is largely due to use of older, often secondhand vehicles and the high mileage associated with daily operations. So decarbonizing the sector presents a major opportunity. It can help modernize fleets by replacing outdated and unsafe vehicles. It can improve service quality, reduce both local air pollution and emissions, and potentially support a shift toward higher capacity and more efficient vehicles. Next slides, please. So this webinar series is organized around 3 parts, each from 1 hour. First, we will share regional lessons and enabling policy and regulatory frameworks, drawing in particular from insights gained through the Nairobi study tour. Second, we will introduce practical tools for policymakers, operators, and investors to help advance paratransit electrification in their own contexts. And for that, we will look at the Mobilize Net Zero tool. Third, we will explore how to capacitate city, regional, and national government on GHG emissions calculations of the paratransit sector in aid of climate action plans and NDCs. So moving on to the next slide, welcome to the first hour of this webinar. We have until 10:55, and please, of course, feel free to stay for the next webinars if you are interested and if you have time. So we're getting started, and I am now leaving the floor to Tenele to introduce the first session.
Thank you so much, Johan, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Tenele Ndlovu, Project Manager for Zero Emission Buses at C40 Cities. I work part of the Zebra and also TUMI project. So what we're going to be covering today for session 1 is a recent study tour that we took to Nairobi with our African cities, focusing in Southern Africa, which is Johannesburg and eThekwini. We also took Lagos and Addis Ababa with the operators. We have also operators in the room today that are going to share their experiences, as the study tour was focused on the transition to zero emission paratransit and also public transportation. So how then are we integrating the move into zero emission and climate resilient future? I would introduce Marvin Stolz from GIZ, who would cover the TUMI context, background, and information before we can dive deep into session 1. Over to you, Marvin.
Good morning, everyone, from my side, and thank you so much for the kind introduction, Tenele. My name is Marvin. I'm a transport policy advisor working for TUMI, which is the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, a partnership funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And from GIZ side, we implement this initiative jointly with our partners, and we also host the TUMI Secretariat. And yeah, it's a real pleasure for me to help set the context now for today's session, especially this first part on paratransit electrification in African cities. And yeah, as Tenille mentioned, the discussion will build directly on the study tour that took place in Nairobi at the end of February this year. And the study tour was brought together or made possible through a joint effort of C40 cities, of us at TUMI, of Zebra, ICT, as well as the Nairobi City County and the UN Environment Program. And you know, from TUMI side, we always see a big value in bringing delegates to other places to gain hands-on experiences with electric buses, with minibus deployment, and also to, you know, engage with operators, with city officials, and explore different procurement models or business models, how charging solutions work, and also have a clear look on the, you know, broader enabling environment for such a transition. And we believe it's a great value that participants can not only see the technology in action, but they can also understand real world challenges and opportunities for implementation. So today we want to hear from cities and operators which took part in the study tour, what they experienced in Nairobi, what they took away, and what learnings they want to adapt to their home context and cities. And I think one key message, which was clear even before the study tour, but became clearer even through this during the study tour, was that paratransit obviously is not a side system in Africa. It's the backbone of mobility in many African cities, and in some cases, paratransit, or also popular transport, as we can also call it, carries the majority of daily passengers. So if we are serious about climate action, if we're serious about improving air quality and about livelihoods, about creating economic opportunities, then we must also be serious about transforming paratransit. And we believe that electrification is one very important puzzle piece to do so, to decarbonize and also to modernize this important transport mode. And as we are reminded these days more and more dramatically, e-mobility can help countries globally to strengthen energy security by reducing their dependence on foreign oil, especially when coupled with renewable energies. It's basically an unbeatable combination. So that's why we are very happy for the great collaboration which we have with C40 cities on this regard. And just as a last comment on this topic, we should also at the same time recognize that electrifying paratransit and minibus systems is not only a technological question. This is why, you know, the study tour to Nairobi was not only looking at this technology part, but it also included elements about governments, about financing, social inclusion, with an eye on gender issues and female representation, for example, and as well as long-term sector reform. So the whole transition is also about how we can move from pilots to scalable systems, from projects to coordinated transformation, because I believe we all know that you know, learning from each other and working together on a similar problem or challenge will ultimately increase the likelihood of a sustainable transformation in transport, which we are all looking for. So with that, I very much look forward to hearing reflections from the cities, from the representatives, and also from the operators on the Nairobi study tour, and to rich and open discussion with all of you of how we can move this agenda forward in our respective contexts. And thank you very much. And back to you, Tenille.
Thank you so much, Marvin, for that context setting. I think what has become clear, colleagues, when we went to Nairobi was how then paratransit in Africa is taken as a public transport system rather than being popular transport or in informal transport sector. So what also Assisted is seeing in the African cities, how the other cities are transitioning. So with the cities being present and also learning from each other, I think we get it how then in Africa we can transition without using case studies from other countries, but rather learning from each other here in Africa, because our experiences or also our policies allow for certain things. So it's how then Nairobi has transitioned with the looks of Addis Ababa having the ICE ban. How can we take that into all the African cities and ensure that the transition also integrates the popular transport, paratransit, or informal transport sector into being public transport systems? Not so long ago, we also celebrated the World Public Transport Day by UITP, which also proves that public transport is also the backbone of African cities and also the global world. How then do we transition, ensuring that our health and also our livelihoods are not impacted? First on our speakers, we have Lutendo Musandiwa from the city of Johannesburg, who's going to take us through their lessons as a city of Johannesburg in Nairobi and also their next steps. What is it that they can take forward from what we've learned in Nairobi? Lutendo, if you're in the room, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning, Denele. Good morning, everyone in the room, and thank you, colleagues, for this webinar. I'm not sure if I'm audible, but
You are.
Okay, thank you. I think what I will try to briefly maybe summarize the key learnings that we have learned from the Nairobi Paratransit Electrification Study Tour, which for me, what came out, or maybe let me start by saying that as the city of Joburg, we have an approved climate action plan, which has identified that from 2029, the city must procure or support the procurement of zero emission vehicles only. So we are working very hard to ensure that we are ready, and we even procure before 2029, so that we know that we're confident that we going forward we will be procuring zero emission vehicles. So, but and going back to the study tour itself, what we have what really came up was the issue of the operational model, which is based on the funding model, and this is the basic goal leasing model, where the operator use the vehicles or they pay for the kilometers they've used, and this model is supported by full maintenance. So I think that was one critical issue that really came out, and why this was a critical issue is the fact that vehicles are not cheap. EVs are not cheap, so which hinders the transition. Or if then there's no form of of assisting or coming with creative ways of ensuring that this vehicle are accessible, that cost will then go to the users, to the commuters, and most of the commuters, or over 90% of the commuters, these are people that are on the lower LCMs. So you don't want them to pay, because already they are paying a huge percentage of their income to transport. So you need to ensure that you come up with models that really provide vehicles that are accessible and that are within the price range. And this is the model that for me, it came out as one of the key. And with this means that now we need to then look into our policies, look into our funding models, because you can't operate public transport without government support or a subsidy. So, and for you to be able to do that, then you need to then have policies that allows and support, all the programs. Whatever you are doing must align with the programs that are currently there. And I want to believe that as South Africa, we have an opportunity to do this as we are looking at, or the national department is looking at how they can then restructure their grant support. So the second thing that I've learned or that came up was the issue of local assembly. So local assembly is critical, and it's critical to ensure that we fast track adoption. It's critical to build a good perception from operators, because you don't want operators to feel like these vehicles are coming from somewhere and there's no support. So if something happens to this vehicle, then how am I going to get how am I going to get support? The after sale support can be supported by having a local assembly, which then deals with the issues of perception, and when they know that I know that this vehicle has been made there or has been assembled there, in an area that they know, they will have that comfort to say I can still get assistance even after the sale of, even after I bought these vehicles, and whatever I will be experiencing during my operation of the vehicle, there will be that assistance. So these are the critical learnings that that we have learned. So the last one is the issue of infrastructure. To say we do have infrastructure that is on the ground, but this infrastructure was built for ICE engine. So in terms of, and you can't then say we are going to discard the whole infrastructure that is there, but you need to then adapt it, and so that you can be able to incorporate the new technology, the zero emission technology, and the new operational model, because with zero emission there comes a new operational model that we need to adapt. So I think in the main, those are the learnings that we have learned, and maybe what Danele had alluded to, which is what are we doing. So what we are doing currently, we are busy with the trial, where we will be trying electric buses within our routes, and ensuring that going forward, then we procure this, and we are also working around working around procuring the pilot buses for the city, so that the city can start piloting. And the city's electricity entity, City Power, has started rolling out the charging stations. So that's what we are doing in terms of, to ensure that we transition. Thank you, moderator. I think that is all that I wanted to share with the colleagues on the call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lutendo, from the city of Johannesburg. I think what you've shared also covers then the policy side of things on what we can learn from Kenya, as they have also published their national electric mobility strategy, which is something that we took very great on how then Africa can transition with the assistance, or rather learning from each other, taking from Kenya on their transition before the policy was made. So we can also do the same thing, even though it's not really regulatory, but how then can we move forward, and maybe policy can follow after, because this is something that has been tested and it has worked in Kenya. I'd like to call upon Babalwa Lata from eThekwini Municipality. Babalwa, if you're on the call, because it was a last minute thing and you don't have a presentation, we really apologize for that. Maybe if you can open your mic and share with the colleagues what the city has learned from Kenya and what the city will take forward. Thank you. Wabalwa. So we can come back to her later. Maybe moving forward, Catherine, I'll hand over to the Move Yaoundé team to share on the operator's perspective, because we're also joined by operators who also shared their experiences, and we're also looking forward to taking this back to their countries.
Next slide.
Bonjour à tout le monde, où que vous soyez. Je suis Mamoun Jean-Mat Mohamed, l'un des opérateurs du secteur du transport urbain par taxi ici au Cameroun et dans la ville de Yaoundé. Donc aujourd'hui, je suis très ravi, très content de vous savoir autant en ligne pour parler de l'électrification du secteur des transports dans des pays qui ont déjà l'expérience. Alors, je vous parle de notre voyage à Nairobi. C'est un voyage qui est vraiment porteur pour nous. C'est un voyage qui nous a permis, n'est-ce pas, de comprendre l'importance de la transition.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Donc, je disais donc que c'est un voyage qui nous a permis de comprendre effectivement l'importance de la transition électrique des véhicules diesel vers les véhicules électriques, effectivement, dans le transport urbain. Donc, il faut dire que nous avons déjà commencé ici au Cameroun à implémenter, n'est-ce pas, ce que nous avons pu retenir lors de notre voyage à Nairobi. Donc, l'intérêt, c'est que nous sommes en train de nous adapter à cette réforme. Donc, c'est des systèmes de nouvelles technologies. Nous nous adaptons déjà parce que nous avons compris que il est important que nous intégrons, n'est-ce pas, cette nouvelle technologie, c'est-à-dire laisser progressivement nos moyens de transport, les taxis à moteur diesel pour mettre en place progressivement le système de transport électrique. Donc, ici chez nous, c'est pas facile, mais néanmoins, le gouvernement, c'est-à-dire le ministère des Transports, avec les autorités locales, c'est-à-dire les collectivités territoriales décentralisées, sont déjà à pied d'œuvre pour pouvoir mettre en place cette politique de transition. Donc, il faut dire que c'est notre présence à Nairobi, notre voyage nous a permis de comprendre que la transition du véhicule diesel au véhicule électrique dans le transport urbain est une réalité viable et que sa mise en œuvre a déjà commencé dans les villes africaines, notamment à Nairobi où on était, en Afrique du Sud et autres. Donc, les villes du Cameroun doivent également suivre sans délai. Donc, nous avons également compris que la transition l'exige. Donc, une réforme à l'échelle du système pour accueillir de nouvelles technologies a déjà commencé. Donc, et maintenant, les leaders notre politique, c'est-à-dire que le gouvernement est déjà à pied d'œuvre pour établir des normes et fournir des orientations. Donc, maintenant, nous sommes en train de nous mettre ensemble en tant qu'opérateurs du secteur pour former, n'est-ce pas, de groupes pour se mettre en groupement d'initiative économique, c'est-à-dire JE, en abréviation. Donc, parce que nous avons vu le rôle des coopératives d'opérateurs ô combien important lors de notre voyage dans le processus de transition. Donc, nous avons également vu que à Nairobi, par exemple, puisqu'on y était lors de notre voyage d'études, les villes n'ont pas attendu que la transition soit initiée par le gouvernement. Donc, nous avons copié cet exemple. Donc, en se mettant en tant qu'opérateur et du secteur privé, nous avons pris le devant. Et nous sommes sûrs qu'en commençant, en étant en groupe d'opérateurs, en groupement d'initiative économique, le gouvernement va suivre. Donc, c'est d'ailleurs le temps de saluer l'exemple de Sago à Nairobi qui a vraiment favorisé la transition. Donc, mais il faut dire que il faut dire que la politique de cette transition n'est pas sans obstacle. On a, par exemple, ici, le problème de financement. C'est vrai que c'est une répétition. On a un problème de financement qui est vraiment un gros problème pour décoller dans ce processus de transition. Donc, on sait que les coûts sont élevés. Les coûts sont élevés pour passer des véhicules diesel aux véhicules électriques. Mais l'essentiel, c'est que nous avons pu apprendre des solutions innovantes. Donc, on a compris qu'en se regroupant en GIC, on peut facilement avoir des partenaires qui puissent nous accompagner dans le financement. Et je ne peux pas parler sans citer le modèle Basico qui offre un financement, dont les opérateurs payent au kilomètre. Telles sont les informations que nous avons recueillies sur le terrain. Et donc, ils payent au kilomètre et ce mode de paiement couvre le véhicule, la maintenance et éventuellement les recharges sans avoir à dépenser beaucoup de sous. Nous pouvons également citer Room électrique qui met l'accent sur l'assemblage local afin de réduire les coûts des 2 roues et des bus. Donc, 2 roues, notamment les motos. Donc, nous sommes à pied d'œuvre, nous sommes en train de nous mettre ensemble en groupe d'opérateurs pour commencer et donc espérer avoir la main tendue de ces partenaires tels Basico, Room électrique qui puissent nous soutenir et éventuellement. Donc, l'autre obstacle, c'est sur le plan énergétique. Donc, nous avons également compris que l'énergie électrique, à elle seule, ne peut pas suffire pour implémenter ce processus de transition des véhicules diesel vers les véhicules électriques. Donc, il faut absolument tendre la main vers d'autres sources d'énergie renouvelables, notamment le soleil. Donc, le manque d'énergie électrique est un obstacle véritable. Donc, nous comprenons ensemble qu'il va falloir chercher également des possibilités qui puissent nous permettre d'avoir d'autres sources d'énergie complémentaires à l'électricité qui existe pratiquement déjà. Donc, maintenant, comme stratégie d'intégration, je l'ai déjà dit, nous nous sommes dit qu'il va falloir une forte collaboration entre tous les acteurs, c'est-à-dire d'un côté, nous, les opérateurs de transport privés, et de l'autre côté, le gouvernement de notre pays, notamment le ministère des Transports, comme je l'ai dit, les autorités nationales, les collectivités territoriales décentralisées, déjà, ils sont déjà à pied d'œuvre pour nous accompagner dans ce qu'on est déjà en train de mettre sur pied par la suite. Donc, et en même temps, nous explorons n'est-ce pas, des solutions pour des sources, d'autres sources d'énergie. Donc, cela va nous permettre de contourner ces problèmes. Donc, maintenant, pour sortir certainement, le voyage d'études a été également une opportunité de réseautage. C'est-à-dire que c'est un voyage qui nous a permis de se rencontrer avec des personnes du secteur et des personnes d'autres horizons avec qui nous gardons le contact aujourd'hui et que nous essayons de temps à autre de contacter pour pouvoir avoir plus d'informations. Donc, nous, opérateurs de taxi à Yaoundé, nous sommes engagés à formaliser les organisations de transport en groupement d'initiatives communes et s'engager dans les partenariats avec des potentiels fournisseurs de véhicules électriques qui, à coup sûr, nous permettra d'atteindre notre objectif. Donc, le ministère des Transports étant en procédure d'établir un cadre pour l'élaboration des politiques nationales de mobilité électrique au Cameroun, avec le soutien de la PNU, est une opportunité et pourra servir de catalyseur d'électrification du paratransit dans les villes du Cameroun. Donc, je vais sortir par là et dire merci à Move Yaoundé qui nous permet à chaque fois de nous déployer et avoir plus d'informations pour atteindre notre objectif dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de la transition dans le secteur des transports. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahuman. Looking at the time, I think what you've covered really clearly on what you've learned, the challenges also that is facing the paratransit sector. I think what then we have to go back and do is how then do we ensure that the financing for the paratransit sector is also being open enough and people are capacitated enough on how then can we develop proposals that are bankable and also pragmatic. I think you've covered well on how then should the people in the professional sector support the operators to transition. Thank you so much for your time. I think Babalolata from eThekwini Municipality was muted. I don't know if that was fixed. Babalo, if it was fixed, please unmute yourself and share the lessons from eThekwini Municipality.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm now unmuted. Thank you, Tanele. Unfortunately, I don't have a presentation, but I'll just briefly talk about a few points that I've learned and what is it that we can take away moving forward as the municipality. Our study tour to Nairobi gave us a useful insight into how another city is dealing with paratransit and integrating the informal transport into a more structured public transport system. So the few key things we learned and what we are taking forward as the municipality, one of them is like the importance of formalizing operators. Nairobi has been working to organize operators into structured groups and companies. So we also decided that we should continue supporting the formalization and professionalization of our operators too, as we have been doing before, but now we should continue with that. And the second point was that we noticed that the existing operators are included in reform. So their approach is not to remove informal operators immediately, but to include them in a transition process. So our transport reforms must remain inclusive and bring current operators into the future systems as well, so that we also noticed that we should continue with that too. So in terms of technology we noticed that technology improves the operations. The introduction of a cashless fee system and digital tools can improve revenue control and planning. So we will continue with that. We should continue investing in smart ticketing and transport technology as we have started as the municipality. And another thing was that planning reduces congestion on the road. As we have noticed, in Nairobi is focusing on managing routes and vehicle numbers better to reduce the overcrowding and unnecessary competition. We also agreed that we need stronger route planning and better matching of supply to demand as the municipality. In terms of infrastructure and enforcement, we also learned that the transport system only work well when supported by proper facilities and law enforcement. So we also must improve infrastructure and strengthen enforcement alongside policy changes. Overall, Nairobi showed us that improving paratransit is possible when reform is practical, inclusive, and data-driven. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Babala, on sharing the city's lessons from the Nairobi tour. Looking at the time, I think we'll just jump straight into a eThekwini operator. Mr. Matula Mkize, if you're in the call, please unmute yourself. Babala, can you check if Mr. Mkize is in the call? While we're still waiting, colleagues, Joanne, I don't know if we have questions in our Q&A tab that we can so long try to respond to and ask.
So we have no questions so far, but please feel free to write questions or remarks, reactions in the chat, and we will be happy to address them.
Thanks, Johan. Lagos, if is in the room, anyone can unmute. Bayonla, if you're in the call, you can just share your experiences while we're still waiting for the eThekwini operator.
We have one question in the chat. So 2 questions. Thank you very much for your questions and reactions. First question, could you clarify what the Rome electric model is in relation to Yaoundé? And the second question is, how is Nairobi optimizing the demand and supply situation for public transport?
Thanks, John. Catherine, I'll draw the first one to you and Mr. Mohammed.
Are the presentators still with us? Do you want to answer and react? Yeah.
Actuellement, on n'a pas encore d'électrification dans la ville de Yaoundé.
Currently,
So-
there is no electrification, I mean, in terms of motor taxi or taxi in Yaoundé.
Thank you.
And do you want to
And-
take the supply and demand one? With regards to Rome?
So the question is, how is Nairobi optimizing the demand and supply situation for public transport?
Priyan, in the call.
If there's any technical issue, please let us know in the chat.
Or a response from the Nairobi City County on the chat. If you can't unmute yourself.
Maybe they're having issue in unmuting themselves. Can you please, Tenele, share the name with me so that I'll unmute them myself? Maybe that's the issue. If you mind sharing them in the chat.
Okay. Is Priyan still on the call? Do we have any other questions? I think that one, Johan, we can respond to later. So we'll keep it in the Q&A and get a response from the Nairobi City County because the webinar is going forward, so that won't be deleted. We'll just respond. And if we can get the name, maybe we can send an email when we are sending through the study tour report. So just to share, colleagues, our study tour report is out and it's going to be sent to all participating colleagues here with the presentations. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We are also in a capacitating mode, a learning mode. So if there are any questions, any comments on how maybe we should have approached it, how can we approach the electrification workshops and study tools going forward, share any thoughts, and how then I think the most challenge that people shared is the financing part. How can we ensure that going forward, this is not an issue for Africa? What is it that we can do? Either it's getting the developmental finance institute in the room or getting the commercial banks in the room. How can we ensure that the transition is not only blocked by finance or the technology or infrastructure challenges, but that when the transition happens, we have all stakeholders involved and in support of the transition, that any blockages that exist then are addressed. Any other questions we can take? We have
We have a question. We have a question and a reaction. So the question is, so for Cameroon, for Yaoundé, you also mentioned that the government is in the process of developing a national e-mobility policy with the support of UNEP. And the person is asking at what level is that policy development at? And then we have two other reactions that I'll share after.
Okay, Catherine, Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you, Tenele. I think my colleague Angela has replied in the chat. UNEP is supporting the Ministry of Transport to elaborate that policy. For now, they are at the level of consultation with other different stakeholders, and we as Move Yaoundé, we are closely following up on this policy, and we hope also to be able to support. Over to you.
Thank you. That is answered, Johan.
Thank you. We have other reactions. One is concerning Nairobi, and I think we're missing the person, but still we're gonna share the reaction. So a participant is saying that being a resident of Nairobi, their main concern is the transportation system, largely informal, unsafe, and poor quality. And the question is, how can transformation to low emission going to be leveraged to improve the actual system? If we have someone who can answer that, otherwise, we do apologize for not being able to answer, and we'll gather the questions about Nairobi and we'll address them. But just last chance, if someone is in the conversation.
Anyone from Nairobi? I think we'll just have to answer and
We'll move
postpone
to, we have a bit of time still, and we'll move to the next one. Our apologies for this. So another reaction about Yaoundé again. So it was mentioned that the issue of power availability and how this issue will impact on the scalability of e-mobility. So the question about the lack of grid capacity that can impede on how much power the grid can take on the discharge. And the question is, what work has been done in these areas to ensure readiness for e-mobility scalability?
Catherine or your colleague Angela, if she can also unmute.
Merci pour la question. Il faut dire que le problème d'électricité ici n'est pas n'a pas un gros impact sur l'évolution du processus de transition vers les véhicules électriques parce que le Cameroun dispose d'une base de données sur l'électricité, sur le solaire. Donc, le solaire est considérable ici au Cameroun. Et donc, nous pensons que cela pourrait, n'est-ce pas, résoudre le problème et nous permettre d'évoluer dans la vision.
Just a bit of translation. Yes, that's the issue of electricity in Cameroon is there, but with the idea of shifting to solar energy, maybe because the country of Cameroon is having it's easy to have solar energy as the how do you call it? The solar period is higher than the rain. Yes, the dry season. Sorry, yeah, I lost the word. The dry season is there, so they can explore easily the solar energy. So they hope by shifting to that source of energy, maybe they'll be able to address that issue of energy for electrification.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I think, Johan, I can throw it back to you because we are at that time.
We still, well, we actually have 5 minutes left, and there's still one question. Sorry, I'm reading it at the same time. So someone is asking, what about scheduling of electric vehicles and multimodal scheduling? The person is sharing that they're finding operations planning and scheduling is not receiving attention, and they would love to hear some thoughts of the visits to Nairobi on this aspect. Maybe on Yaounde's side, if you feel like sharing more on this. And yeah, we're reaching the last 5 minutes of our session. Catherine, the floor is yours if you want to add something. No answer. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, we will be gathering the questions that were left unanswered. Thank you very much for your engagement and your presence in this first session. This is a small coffee break for those who are staying with us for the next session. The next session will be starting in 9 minutes, 8 minutes at 11. Thank you very much. And I will be sharing the link right now for our feedback, for the feedback questionnaire, and please feel free to fill it. That would be really helpful for us. It is right here. Sorry about that, exactly here. And I am sharing it. It is a very short one. It is 3 minutes and it is very helpful for us. Thank you very much for joining, for those who are leaving now, and for the others, we'll be meeting at 11. Thank you.